Random House Audiobooks presents I is for Innocent by Sue Grafton. Read for you by Judy Kaye.
I is for Innocent. I feel compelled to report that at the moment of death, my entire life did not pass before my eyes in a flash. There was no beckoning white light at the end of the tunnel, no warm, fuzzy feeling that my long-departed loved ones were waiting on the other side. What I experienced was a little voice piping up in an outraged tone, "Aw, come on, you're not serious. This is really it?" Mostly I regretted I hadn't tidied my chest of drawers the night before as I'd planned. It's painful to realize that those who mourn your untimely demise will also carry with them the indelible image of all your tatty underpants. You might question the validity of the observation, since it's obvious I didn't die when I thought I would, but let's face it, life is trivial. And my guess is that dying imparts very little wisdom to those in process. My name is Kinsey Millhone. I'm a licensed private investigator operating out of Santa Teresa, which is 95 miles north of Los Angeles. For the past 7 years, I've been running my own small agency adjacent to the home offices of California Fidelity Insurance. My agreement with the company entitled me to the use of an attractive corner suite in exchange for the investigation of arson and wrongful death claims on an as-needed basis. In late October, that arrangement was abruptly terminated when a hotshot efficiency expert was transferred to Santa Teresa from the CF branch office in Palm Springs. I hadn't thought I'd be affected by the change in company management, since I was operating as an independent contractor instead of a bona fide California Fidelity employee. However, at our first and only meeting, this man and I took an instant dislike to one another. In the 15 minutes that comprised our entire relationship, I was rude, pugnacious, and uncooperative. The next thing I knew, I was out on the street with my client files packed up in assorted cardboard boxes. I've heard that no one gets fired without secretly hoping for the liberation, but that sounds like the kind of pronouncement you make before you've been given the boot. Being fired is the pits, ranking right up there with infidelity and its brutalizing effect. The ego recoils and one's self-image is punctured like a tire by a nail. In the week since I'd been terminated, I'd gone through all the stages one suffers at the diagnosis of a soon-to-be fatal disease: anger, denial, bargaining, drunkenness, foul language, head colds, rude hand gestures, anxiety, and eating disorders of sudden onset. Lately, however, I'd begun to wonder if it wasn't true, this notion of a repressed desire to be unceremoniously shit-canned. Maybe I was bored with California Fidelity. Maybe I was simply longing for a change of scene. Whatever the truth, I'd begun to adjust, and I could feel the optimism rising through my veins like maple syrup. It was more than a matter of survival. One way or another, I knew I'd prevail. For the time being, I was renting a spare room in the law offices of Kingman and Ives. Lonnie Kingman is in his early 40s, 5'4", 205 pounds, a weightlifting fanatic, perpetually pumped up on steroids, testosterone, vitamin B12, and caffeine. He's got a shaggy head of dark hair, like a pony in the process of shedding a winter coat. I know from the various degrees framed and hung on his wall that he received a BA from Harvard, an MBA from Columbia, and then graduated summa cum laude from Stanford Law School. In Santa Teresa, all the flashy cases seem to go to Lonnie Kingman. He's mentioned so often in the newspaper he might as well take out an ad. He's best known for his criminal defense work, but his passion is complex trials in any case involving accidental injury or wrongful death, which is how our paths crossed in the first place. I'd done some work for Lonnie in the past, and aside from the fact that I'm occasionally in need of his services myself, I figured he'd be good for the referrals. From his point of view, it didn't hurt to have an investigator on the premises. As with California Fidelity, I was not an employee. I worked as an independent contractor, providing professional services and billing accordingly. It was a Monday morning in early December when I first got involved in the Isabel Birney murder case. I'd driven down to Cottonwood to serve a subpoena on a witness in a battery case. On my way into town, I did a detour past the office. The Kingman building is a 3-story stucco structure with parking tucked in at ground level and 2 floors of offices above. The building straddles the property and has a driveway that passes through an arch on the right, opening up into a tiny parking lot in the rear. The one drawback is the parsimoniously assigned parking spaces. I had a choice of street parking or one of the public lots 3 blocks away. As a consequence, I spent a lot of time either moving my car or cruising the area trying to ferret out a spot that was both close by and free. Happily, this exasperating situation only extends until 6 p.m. It was then 6:15, and the third-floor windows along the front were dark, suggesting that everyone had already gone home for the day. When I drove through the arch, I saw Lonnie's car was still in its slot. The Toyota of his secretary, Ida Ruth, was gone, so I eased my car into her space next to Lonnie's Mercedes. I let myself in quietly, not wanting to disturb Lonnie if he was in the middle of a conference. His office door was open, and I glanced in automatically as I went past. He was chatting with a client, but when he caught sight of me, he raised his hand and beckoned, "Kinsey, could you spare a minute? There's someone here I want you to meet." I backtracked to his doorway. Lonnie's client was seated in the black leather wing chair with his back to me. As Lonnie stood up, his client stood too, turning to look at me as we were introduced. His aura was dark, if you buy that kind of talk. "Kenneth Voigt," Lonnie said. "This is Kinsey Millhone, the private investigator I was telling you about." We shook hands, going through the usual litany of greetings while we checked each other out. He was in his early 50s with dark hair and dark brown eyes, the brows separated by deep indentations that had been set there by a scowl. He smiled politely at me, but his face didn't brighten much. "I want her to hear this," Lonnie was saying to Voigt. "She can go through the files tonight and start first thing in the morning." "Fine with me," Voigt said. The two sat down again. I folded myself into one corner of the couch and pulled my legs up under me, considerably cheered by the prospects of a paycheck. Lonnie offered me a word of explanation before the conversation continued. "The private investigator we were using just dropped dead of a heart attack. Morley Shine, you know him?" "Of course," I said, startled. "Morley died? When was this?" "Last night, about 8. Morley Shine had been around ever since I could remember. Not a close friend, but certainly a man I could count on if I found myself in a pinch. He and the fellow who trained me as a PI had been partners for years. Morley was in his late 60s, tall and slump-shouldered, probably 80 pounds overweight, with a round, dimpled face, wheezing laugh, and fingers yellowed from all the cigarettes he'd smoked. I'd have to quiz Lonnie later about the circumstances of Morley's death. For the time being, I concentrated on Kenneth Voigt, who had backed up his narrative so he could get a running start. He stared down at the floor, hands clasped loosely in his lap. "My ex-wife was murdered 5 years ago. Isabel Barney, you remember the case?" "I don't think so," I said. "Someone unscrewed the fisheye in the middle of the front door. He knocked, and when she flipped on the porch light and peered out, he fired a .38 through the spy hole. She died instantly." My memory kicked in with a jolt. That was her? Oh, I do remember that much. I can't believe it's been 5 years. I nearly added my only other recollection, that the guy alleged to have killed her was her estranged husband, apparently not Kenneth Voigt. But who? I made eye contact with Lonnie, who interjected a comment. "The guy's name is David Birney. He was acquitted, in case you're curious." Voigt changed positions in his chair as if the very name made him itch. "The bastard." Lonnie said, "Go on with your story, Ken." It seemed to take a few seconds for him to remember what he'd been saying. "We were married for 7 years. A second marriage for both. We have an 11-year-old daughter named Shelby, who's off at boarding school. She was 6 when Iz was killed. Anyway, Isabel and I had been having problems, nothing unusual as far as I knew. She got involved with Birney. She married him a month after our divorce was final. All he wanted was her money. Everybody knew that except poor dumb Iz. And I don't mean any insult to her when I say that. I loved the woman, truly, but she was gullible as they come." I found myself tuning out his analysis of her character. My eye wandered over to the pile of fat manila folders on Lonnie's desk.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?